The ship launched at 0314 station time, and I was in a crawl space. That is how I have always started this account when anyone asks, and I stand by it as the most accurate summary. I, Dale Orveth, Ensign 3rd Grade, Maintenance and Preservation Corps, was elbow-deep in a conduit junction servicing a coolant bypass on a vessel that the Fleet Directorate had officially classified as a museum asset. Then, the vessel decided it had somewhere to be. The jump field activated 11 seconds before the jump. I know this because my tool bag hit the far wall of the crawl space at exactly the moment the inertia keel dampeners, which the Directorate had also, officially, classified as non-operational, engaged and stopped me from following it. Preetha was in the forward observation blister taking atmospheric readings. Was on the outer hull with a wire brush, and 3 hours left on a rust ablation contract. The unbroken patience collected us all before it jumped, sealed the blister, tracted the exterior maintenance platform with Kale, still strapped to it. I heard him swearing over the suit channel, right up until the fold took us. And then, there was the white silence of transit, and then we were somewhere else entirely. I pulled myself out of the crawl space and ran, because that seemed like the appropriate response. The ship was not designed to be run through quickly. She was 400 meters of angular pre-diaspora engineering, corridors built wide enough for combat armor, ceilings high enough that my boots echoed. Every panel that had been dark for the 18 months of our preservation contract was now lit. Every console that had been sealed under archival lacquer was active, and scrolling data I could barely read. The font was an administrative standard that hadn't been in use for approximately 16,000 years. I found the bridge by following the brightest light. Preetha was already there, still holding her atmospheric sensor, staring at a navigational display that showed our position as somewhere in the outer Vareth system. She looked at me. I looked at the display. Neither of us said anything useful for a moment. "The ship jumped," she said finally. "Yes. We didn't authorize that." "No." Kale arrived 2 minutes later, still in his exterior suit, visor up, brush in hand. He looked at the active bridge, at the scrolling consoles, at the navigational display, and then he looked at me with an expression I recognized as the one he reserved for situations where his pay grade was clearly insufficient. I had, by then, begun to piece it together. The Unbroken Patience was a Vanguard-class rapid response vessel, decommissioned in the 43rd year of the post-diaspora consolidation, 18,214 years ago by the current calendar. She had been preserved in situ at Beacon Station Oreth 7 because she was structurally placeable and because the Fleet Directorate had lost the schematics to rebuild her. Our contract was environmental stabilization, humidity, temperature, oxidation suppression, 3 techs, 1 year, good pay. What I had not known, because it was not in our contract documentation, was that Beacon Station Oreth 7 was still technically a beacon station. The array in the outer hull, the one I had assumed was decorative, was apparently still listening. And approximately 40 minutes before the ship launched, it had heard something. The display translated it for me in clean modern script, which told me the translation matrix was also still active. Distress, Authority Varath Mutual Recognition Handshake, response requested. The Unbroken Patience had recognized the handshake. The handshake was 18,000 years old, embedded in an emergency protocol that predated every political entity currently operating in this sector of space, and the ship had matched it to an entry in its own registry and done what it was built to do. It had responded. I sat down in the navigation chair, gently, because it was a museum artifact, and began trying to understand what we were flying into. Vareth Station was burning when we arrived. Not catastrophically, but deliberately, 3 points along the outer ring trailing smoke into the vacuum. And a vessel I did not recognize holding position 200 kilometers off the station's primary dock. It was running no identification. It was also, based on the Patience's sensor display, running what appeared to be a drive suppression field against the station's own emergency evacuation craft. The Unbroken Patience did not ask my opinion. She broadcast first. A clear channel identification pulse in the old mutual aide, register which I later learned had not been heard in this region of space since before the Verfroth system had been colonized by its current inhabitants. Then she began deploying, I watched from the bridge as the drone bay indicators lit up, bays I had cataloged as empty, because their contents were stored in archival suspension and had not appeared on the standard inventory manifest. 43 containment drones, each one a meter-long autonomous unit that the Patience was now directing with a precision that required no input from me, Preetha, or Kale, because the ship's tactical core was doing it without us. The unidentified vessel attempted to maneuver. The Patience placed 12 drones in a dispersal pattern around its drive assembly before it completed the turn. The drive suppression field against the station collapsed. I saw the diagnostic confirm it. 4 days after our arrival. Kale, still holding his wire brush, said, "Are we doing this?" "I don't think we have a choice," Preetha said. "We're 3 maintenance workers. The ship is aware of that," I said, "and appears not to care." The hail from the station came 11 minutes after we arrived, which told me someone over there had needed a moment to compose themselves. The voice was female, young, and carrying the specific quality of professional calm that a person adopts when they have decided that losing composure is not an option they can afford. "Unidentified vessel," she said. "This is Vetharasol, administrative aide to Governor Rath Kaval of Varath Station. You have responded to our distress signal. We are grateful. We did not pause. We did not transmit on a channel we believed was active." I looked at Preetha. Preetha looked at the channel readout, which was displaying the mutual recognition handshake frequency, a frequency that, according to the Patience's own registry, had been established by a treaty signed before the Varath system had its current name. Pressed the response key. It was, as far as I could tell, still functional. "Varath Station, this is the unbroken Patience. We received your signal." I stopped. I looked at Kale. He shrugged. "We are here. The stay and drive suppression field is released. The vessel holding position off your dock has been contained. Are your people safe?" Another pause. Longer this time. "We are assessing the unbroken Patience." She said the name carefully, the way a person says something they have just found in an old archive and cannot quite believe is in front of them. "That is the registry identification on your hull, yes. Our records list that vessel as..." She stopped. "Decommissioned." I said, "Yes. We are aware. 18,000 years ago, approximately. We have a current preservation contract. It's a long story." The silence that followed was the kind that happens when someone is staring at a sensor readout, and the readout is not telling them what they expected. "You answered," she said finally. It was not quite a question. "The ship answered," I said, and I meant it precisely. "We were passengers, to a degree. But we are here and your people are safe, and the situation appears to be resolved." I heard her exhale. It was a very quiet sound, the exhale of someone setting down a weight they had not expected to put down yet. "The signal," she said. "It was aimed at the Sovereignty Council. We did not aim it at your network." "No," I said. "You wouldn't have known to. The network hasn't been active officially for a long time." I looked at the beacon array readout. It was still listening. Apparently not as long as everyone thought. We stayed at Varath Station for 6 days. It took that long for the Patience to complete her post-action diagnostic sequence and log the "mission as closed." She was thorough, I will give her that. And for the governor's office to process enough paperwork to formally acknowledge that an 18,000-year-old vessel crewed by a maintenance team had resolved an armed interdiction of a sitting planetary governor's orbital platform. Vetharasol came aboard on the 4th day. She was younger than I'd expected from her voice, precise, composed, with the look of someone who had filed reports in the last 4 days that her supervisors were going to find difficult. She stood in the bridge corridor and looked at the active consoles, the old archival font still scrolling, the museum quality plating on the walls with its 18,000-year patina, and she was quiet for a long moment. "It still works," she said. "Better than we knew," I said. She looked at me, at my tool belt, at the preservation core patch on my shoulder, at the wire brush Kale had finally set down on a console 3 days ago and not picked up since. "You were doing maintenance," she said. "Environmental stabilization, humidity and oxidation." She looked at the bridge again. She looked at the containment drone deployment schematic, still displayed on the main tactical screen, showing the precise dispersal pattern the Patience had executed in 40 seconds without our help. Then she said, Quietly and without any irony at all. She knew what she was doing. Yes, I said. She did. The unbroken patience logged departure from Vareth Station at 0611 on the 6th day, course set for Beacon Station Orith 7, and filed her own mission record in the mutual aid registry before we were out of the system. I did not know the registry was still accepting entries. Apparently it was. We arrived home 22 days late on the preservation contract. Our supervisor's message was waiting in the doc-com buffer, and it was not short. I read it twice and decided the explanation could wait until morning. The patients had already gone quiet again. Panels dark, consoles sealed, the old font gone from the screens. She was a museum asset. She was on her humidity and oxidation schedule. I checked the beacon array before I locked the outer hatch. It was still listening. I left it alone.